Let's start with a truth most men don't want to hear. Women are not confused, complicated, or impossible to understand. Men are just paying attention to the wrong things. And the most controversial part? Women think about men far more often than they admit. But only the men who create a certain emotional reaction in them. Not the nice guys, not the try too hard guys, not the I'll do anything for you guys. Women keep thinking about men who shift their emotions, not men who simply show up. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most men believe women care about looks, money, muscles, or smooth talking. They don't. They care about impact. A man who impacts a woman's emotions stays in her mind longer than the man who checks every physical box. Women remember the man who made them pause, the man who made them feel something unexpected, the man who carried himself differently, even if he wasn't perfect, especially if he wasn't perfect. But the problem is simple. Many men today behave in predictable, low value, or submissive ways. They think being overly available is attractive. They think giving everything too early proves loyalty. They think acting safe guarantees interest. It doesn't. Women think about the man who creates contrast, not comfort. Comfort makes you forgettable. Contrast makes you unforgettable. Throughout this video, I'm going to teach you the behaviors women cannot ignore, the actions that replay in their minds long after the conversation ends, the messages stop, and even after they try to move on. Because once a man understands why women think this way, he stops chasing and starts attracting. First, she thinks about the man who doesn't chase her women. Think about the man who doesn't chase them because he forces them to feel something men rarely trigger anymore: curiosity. And curiosity is one of the strongest emotional hooks a woman can experience. When a man doesn't chase, he instantly becomes different from the majority of men who rush, overgive, or try to impress too early. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men don't want to hear. Chasing feels like pressure. Not chasing feels like value. When a man chases, he communicates without saying a word, "You're above me, I'm trying to earn you." But when a man doesn't chase, he communicates something far more attractive. "I'm choosing you, but I don't need you." And women think about men who don't need them. See, every woman knows she can get attention. She knows she can post a picture and get validation in minutes. She knows she can walk into a room and men will look. What she doesn't get often is a man who is calm, centered, and not in a rush to impress her. A man like that stands out immediately. When you don't chase, you naturally show confidence without performing it. You show control without forcing it. You show interest without losing your self-respect. And that contrast makes her replay the interaction in her mind long after it ends. Questions start forming in her head. Why isn't he trying harder? Why didn't he ask for my number immediately? Why does he seem so comfortable? Does he even like me, or is he just like that? Those questions keep you in her mind. The mistake most men make is believing that more effort equals more attraction. But in the beginning, more effort usually does the opposite. It suffocates the mystery. Women don't bond with men they fully understand on day one. They bond with men who reveal themselves slowly. A man who doesn't chase leaves space. And in that space, she thinks, she imagines, she wonders. Women don't think about the man who gives her everything up front. They think about the man who gives her just enough to stay curious. That's the emotional power of not chasing. 1. A woman meets two men at a social event. One immediately follows her around, compliments her nonstop, and tries to keep her attention. The other speaks to her confidently, enjoys the moment, then walks away first. Hours later, she forgets the one who chased and keeps thinking about the one who didn't. Second, she remembers the man who sets boundaries. Women don't just remember men who are confident, they remember men who protect their time, energy, and self-respect. And boundaries are the clearest, strongest sign that a man actually values himself. Here's the part most men never realize. A woman might like you, but she respects the man who sets boundaries. And respect creates attraction faster than anything you can buy, say, or show off. Boundaries tell her, "I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to see if you fit into my life too." That alone puts you in a completely different category from the average man who bends, breaks, and melts just because a beautiful woman gives him attention. Most men avoid setting boundaries because they think it will scare her away. But the truth is more controversial. A woman loses interest faster in a man who has no boundaries than in a man who enforces them. Why? Because boundaries show emotional strength. And emotional strength is rare. When you set boundaries, you communicate stability. You show that you won't tolerate disrespect, mixed signals, or inconsistency. You show that your life has structure, direction, and purpose, and that no one, not even a woman you like, can pull you off your path. A woman might test you, but she can't forget you when you handle those tests calmly and clearly. If she takes too long to reply, you don't complain. You adjust your availability. If she tries to play with your time, you don't chase, you reschedule. If she pushes a little too far, you don't explode. You simply say, "That doesn't work for me." Most men think this kind of behavior pushes women away, but women actually feel more secure around men who hold their ground. Because think about it. How can she trust you to lead a relationship if you can't even lead yourself? And here's the secret. Now, women remember how a man makes them feel about themselves, but they never forget how a man makes them feel about him. A man with boundaries feels like a man with a life, a man with a spine, a man she can't manipulate, distract, or control. And that type of man stays on her mind. Third, she can't forget the man who walks away. First, every man has experienced this at least once. You pull back, you stop trying, you walk away. And suddenly, the woman who barely cared starts paying attention. It feels confusing, but it's not. It's psychology. It's human behavior. And it's one of the most uncomfortable truths men avoid. The man who walks away first becomes unforgettable. Why? Because walking away is a form of strength. It signals that you aren't afraid of loss, rejection, or being alone. And that kind of emotional power is rare, extremely rare, especially in a world where most men cling to any attention they can get. A man who walks away first communicates something every woman feels on a deeper level. I want you, but I don't need you, and I'll never sacrifice my dignity for you. Women think about that, they replay that, they analyze that, because most men don't walk away. Most men stay too long. Most men tolerate too much. Most men accept mixed signals, disrespect, and emotional inconsistency just because they're afraid of losing a chance. But when you walk away, not out of anger, not out of manipulation, but out of self-respect, you shift her entire perception of you. You stop being predictable. You stop being just another guy. You stop being emotionally available on demand. Suddenly, your absence has weight. She starts noticing the silence. She starts missing the energy you brought. She starts wondering if she misread your value. She starts questioning her own behavior. And the moment a woman questions herself because of how a man responds, she remembers him. Walking away is not about punishing her, it's about protecting yourself. It's about understanding when the dynamic is no longer healthy or balanced. It's about recognizing when your effort isn't being matched. It's about refusing to chase someone who isn't choosing you. And here's what most men don't understand. A woman feels more attraction toward a man who respects himself than toward a man who tries to win her at all costs. When you walk away, you show her you can detach. You show her that your emotions don't control your decisions. You show her that you have options, purpose, and direction beyond her. And that kind of man is not only attractive, he's unforgettable. She doesn't remember the men who stayed no matter what. She remembers the man who had the strength to walk away first. Fourth, she obsesses over the man who stays mysterious. Women obsess over the man who stays mysterious because he represents something most men have forgotten how to be: unpredictable, self-contained, and emotionally disciplined. And here's where many men need a wake-up call. Most of you reveal every card way too early. You talk too much, you share too much, you oversell yourselves, and then you wonder why she loses interest. It's because there's nothing left for her to discover. A mysterious man doesn't hide. He simply doesn't give everything away in the first 5 conversations. He lets a woman experience him gradually, not all at once. And that slow reveal creates emotional tension, the kind that lingers in her mind long after the conversation ends. Most men today are the opposite. They overshare their plans, their feelings, their intentions, their weaknesses, their trauma, their schedule, and every detail of their daily life. They hand over their entire personality immediately, thinking it creates connection. But it doesn't. It kills curiosity. Women are naturally drawn to depth, but depth only exists when there's space she hasn't explored yet. A mysterious man is not confusing or distant, he's selective. He chooses what to share and when. He values privacy, direction, and silence. And silence is powerful. Here is the criticism men need to hear. Many of you talk because you're uncomfortable with silence. You reveal everything because you're scared she'll lose interest. You overshare because you want approval. That's not connection, that's insecurity dressed as vulnerability. A woman can feel the difference instantly. A mysterious man doesn't try to prove himself. He doesn't force her to understand him. He lets time do the work. He lets consistency speak for him. And that calm self-control creates the exact emotional reaction men dream of. She gets curious. She starts wondering who he really is. She pays attention to the little details. She tries to read between the lines. She starts thinking about him at random moments because she hasn't figured him out completely. And that's the whole point. A man becomes unforgettable when there's always something more to learn. Men need to wake up to this. When you give everything too early, you remove the journey. When you stay mysterious, you invite her into it. She doesn't obsess over the man she fully understands. She obsesses over the man she's still trying to figure out. 5. She thinks about the man who makes her feel challenged. Women think about the man who makes them feel challenged because he awakens a part of them that most men never touch. Their desire to rise, match, and impress. And this is the part many men fail to understand. Women don't stay interested in men who make everything too easy. They stay interested in men who make them level up. A challenge doesn't mean playing games. It doesn't mean being rude, cold, or arrogant. It means a man has standards, and he expects those standards to be met. It means he doesn't reward low effort. It means he doesn't allow emotional laziness. It means he carries himself in a way that naturally invites respect. Most men do the opposite. They take whatever they can get. They accept inconsistency. They celebrate breadcrumbs. They lower their expectations just to keep a woman around. And then they wonder why she stops caring. A woman remembers the man who challenges her because he doesn't let her slide into comfort. He doesn't say yes to everything just to be liked. He doesn't ignore problems just to keep the peace. He doesn't act desperate for her attention. Instead, he challenges her emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even spiritually. Not with pressure, with presence, with the silent message, step up, match my effort, match my energy, match my respect. When a woman meets a man like this, she realizes quickly that she can't just float through the connection. She has to be aware. She has to be intentional. She has to show up. That feeling, the feeling of rising to match a man's level, is addictive. Women think about men who make them put in effort. Not because they enjoy difficulty, but because effort creates emotional investment. When she has to think before she speaks, she remembers him. When she has to show her best self, she remembers him. When she has to adjust her behavior, she remembers him. When she has to earn his respect, she remembers him. A man who challenges her becomes a reference point, a standard she compares others to, and that alone makes him unforgettable. Men need to understand this. Being too accommodating doesn't make you safe. It makes you invisible. Being challenging doesn't make you harsh. It makes you valuable. A woman doesn't think endlessly about a man she can easily dominate or control. She thinks about the man who makes her rise. 6th, she remembers the man who doesn't seek validation. Women remember the man who doesn't seek validation because he represents a kind of stability most men don't have. And to be brutally honest, many men today are addicted to approval, especially from women. They crave compliments, reassurance, attention, and emotional hand-holding. They want a woman to tell them they're enough because deep down, they don't believe they are. But a man who doesn't seek validation, he stands out instantly. He walks differently. He speaks differently. He carries himself with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be announced. And women feel that. They feel the difference between a man who has inner strength and a man who needs external approval to feel important. They can sense when a man is acting confident versus when he is confident. And that difference is exactly what makes him memorable. A man who doesn't seek validation isn't trying to be liked. He's trying to be understood. He's not trying to impress, he's trying to connect. He's not trying to win approval. He's already approved of himself. That kind of man is rare. Most men cling to validation because they're afraid of disappointing a woman. They constantly ask themselves, did I say the right thing? Does she like me enough? Did I text too fast? Did I look insecure? Is she losing interest? But here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment you look like you need a woman's validation, she loses interest. Not because she's cruel, but because neediness creates pressure, and pressure kills attraction. Women remember the man who doesn't need their approval because he feels emotionally independent. He's not afraid of silence. He's not desperate for attention. He's not constantly fishing for reassurance. He doesn't crumble when she's distant. He doesn't panic when she pulls back. He remains grounded. And grounded men create a sense of safety, but they also create curiosity. She starts thinking about him because he's not chasing her reactions. He's not analyzing her every move. He's not shaping his personality around her mood. He's simply being himself, with or without her validation. And that's unforgettable. Women think about men who live by their own identity, not the identity they think will get them love. They remember the man whose confidence comes from within, not from praise. They remember the man who's steady, self-assured, and fully at peace with who he is. Because at the end of the day, a woman can admire your looks, your charm, and your ability to impress, but she will only remember the man who didn't need her validation to feel whole. Seventh, she can't ignore the man who stands firm in his standards. Women can't ignore the man who stands firm in his standards because he represents something extremely rare in today's world. A man who knows exactly what he wants and refuses anything that doesn't align with it. This kind of man is not rigid or controlling. He is simply clear, and clarity is magnetic. Most men bend their standards the moment they meet a woman they find attractive. They accept behavior they don't like. They tolerate attitudes they shouldn't. They allow disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional games simply because they're afraid of losing her, and then they ask why she stopped respecting them. But a man who has standards, real standards, becomes unforgettable because he refuses to compromise his identity for anyone. He knows what kind of energy he wants around him. He knows what kind of connection he's willing to invest in. He knows how he wants to be treated. He knows what he will and will not allow, and he communicates all of this without being aggressive. He communicates it simply by living it. Women feel it instantly. They can sense when a man has structure instead of desperation. They can sense when a man expects respect instead of begging for it. They can sense when a man is guided by principles instead of emotions. A man with standards creates a natural separation between himself and every other man she meets. He moves differently. He reacts differently. He chooses differently. His presence alone tells her, I don't accept low effort. I don't reward inconsistency. And I don't participate in situations that drain my energy. That level of self-respect forces a woman to rise to the occasion or step aside. Either way, she remembers him, because most men want to be chosen so badly that they forget to choose. A man with standards chooses. He evaluates, he observes, he decides. He's not scared to walk away from behavior that doesn't align with what he believes in. And that ability, the ability to walk away from comfort, beauty, and attention because it doesn't meet his standards, is exactly what makes a woman think about him long after he's gone. Women are drawn to men who lead themselves, not men who follow their feelings, not men who fold under pressure, not men who change their entire personality just to keep a woman around. A man with standards stands out because he stands firm, and women can't ignore a man like that. Conclusion. The uncomfortable truth. Every man needs to hear. Here's the truth most men will never admit to themselves. Women don't fall for nice guys. They fall for men who respect themselves first. And yes, that means being unapologetically firm, confident, and sometimes even a little unavailable. It's controversial because society teaches men to be compliant, to chase relentlessly, to prioritize a woman's approval over their own. But chasing, overgiving, and bending over backward, it rarely works. In fact, it usually makes you forgettable. The women who think about men long after a conversation ends, they think about men who challenge them, men who stay mysterious, men who walk away first, and men who stand by their boundaries and standards, not men who grovel, constantly seek validation, or try too hard to win her over. And here's the part most men won't like. If you're constantly trying to please a woman, you are invisible to her. Harsh? Maybe. True? Absolutely. Women are wired to notice strength, not submission. Respect yourself first and watch how women start noticing you differently and thinking about you when you're not even there. I want you to think about your experiences. Have you ever been the man who had to chase only to be forgotten? Or have you ever witnessed a woman obsess over a man who stayed calm, mysterious, and firm? Comment below with your stories. I want to hear them. I will read through your experiences and reach out because this isn't just theory. This is reality, and I want us to connect over it. Remember, attraction isn't created by desperation. It's created by presence, confidence, and emotional control. Stop chasing, start standing firm, and watch how the dynamics change. And here's a cliffhanger for the next video: what women secretly notice in men's behavior that instantly turns them off, even if he seems perfect on paper. You won't want to miss it.